Dobrze, jesteśmy gotowi, żeby rozpocząć nasze
We're
dzisiejsze
ready to
spotkanie.
start today's meeting.
Dobry Państwu, Janusz
Good
Markowski,
afternoon.
Strefa Inwestycji.
Janusz Marszewski, Investor Zone. It's Friday, the 6th of March, 2026. It's past 12 noon. I'm pleased to welcome you to a video conference with representatives of the UNIMOT Group. Joining me, sorry for the short delay due to technical issues. And we are now beginning. Joining me are Mr. Adam Sikorski, President of the Management Board of the UNIMOT Group. Morning. And Mr. Filip Kurpatwa, member of the Management Board for Finance in the UNIMOT Group. Good morning. During today's meeting, we'll discuss what the ongoing conflict in the Middle East means in practice for the industry, the fuel business, and of course, for the UNIMOT Group itself. This meeting will be divided into two parts. We'll start with a presentation prepared by our guests, and then it will be followed by a question and answer session. I invite you to listen to the presentation and encourage you to ask questions during the presentation using the dedicated form on the website. And now I give the floor to our guests. Please, your presentation. Thank you, Mr. Janusz. Now I will share my presentation. Please confirm you can see it. We can see it. Sirs, ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy we can talk to you in these circumstances that are, of course, difficult. We just recognize that similarly to 2020, during COVID and 2022, the beginning of war in Ukraine, I remember that you appreciated good communication from the UNIMOT, that we were openly discussing the situation and its impact on UNIMOT and the market. And we recognize that after almost a week, 6 days of hostilities in Near East, it's worth not only from the press conferences share our opinion, how we see the situation and the scenarios we draw up and what actions we have and we are undertaking with the provision that the situation is very volatile. So as a company, as the management, we're obliged to certain scenarios, and we want to share this with you, as well as with the current impact on the UNIMOT's operations. This meeting is also conducted in English, so you can switch to the English interpretation. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll talk about several macro issues, but after those 6 days of hostilities, you can see everything that's happening in the macro scale. So a lot of good information on the X platform. On TV, you can see experts, so everybody in the world knows about Hormuz Strait and its impact on the world trade, how much crude oil goes through the strait, 95% of the export from Qatar, and main import direction is Asia, but not only Asia is affected by the situation in the strait. I also mentioned it during the meeting with the investors. Today, everybody competes for the same barrels. Asian countries want to buy from the same places where we bought historically. And the fact that the share of a given product from Far East wasn't big in Europe doesn't mean that we can sleep peacefully. And we have to see it as a challenge, because the market unfolds afresh. Just like in 2022, after the beginning of war in Ukraine, and then after the introduction of sanctions on Russian crude oil, and February 2023 on Russian fuels, the market had to unfold afresh, and the situation is repeating here. So you can see the data on the slide, which we'll make available. Now, what has happened? We have communicated it, but in 2 words, what has happened to the oil market. But the oil market is not the most important, but the product market is.
Tak, dzień dobry Państwu jeszcze raz.
Hello, everyone.
Jak wiemy, no to są dwa
As
rynki,
we
tak?
know,
One
these
są
are
oczywiście
two
skorelowane.
markets.
Jeden
They are
wynik
correlated, one results from the other, but still these are two markets that are governed by their own laws. And we are all looking at the balance of the oil, but also the balance of the products, refinery capacities that are switched off, and refurbishments in Europe and in Poland, which we will discuss later on. The product balance is also observed. Everybody speculates what is going to happen when there are shortages of oil and the commodities are not delivered on time. These are prices that were calculated for per barrel, and we can see the strong growth. This is the dark line, for example, of diesel on the European markets, that it's much faster than the red line, which is the growth of oil. Everything is growing, but oil is preparing. The markets were preparing for these events, but the shutdown of the Hormuz Strait has surprised everyone, and it has impact on products. The products are growing quicker, and the crack, the difference between diesel and oil, which is part of the refiner margin, the price at which a refinery buys oil and at which sells ready products, the crack has spiked, which shows that the margins, the premium for the risk in products is higher. The biggest changes are in the jet fuel, because the balance here is the most observed and distorted. The growth of jet fuel is almost it's almost 80%. I will add that what we are talking about here, we have OPEC. OPEC is able to regulate the mining of oil and replace several million of barrels of production in different countries. There is place like Venezuela and the United States with the growth of price above $80 per barrel. They are able to commission additional capacities, but the number of refineries is limited, which is also important. The first signal that we will try to talk here about positive, but also negative aspects, what you can see in this box at the bottom, volatile growth of purchase premium. The premium purchase, you can check on many platforms the prices and the purchase premium that we have to pay for to buy according to these quotations. This premium is higher than after the introduction of sanctions in Ukraine. It's higher than at that time, and we understand it as the factor, not negative, the market, but the factor that shows how the market treats this situation as serious. Premium has risen to the level which we haven't had here in Poland, even in the situation of introducing sanctions of the Russian oil in February 2023, where premiums were $30. Now we are at the level of $50, which can be momentary, but still it shows that the jump was very quick. The storage inventories of oil in Europe, the inventories have been built since the beginning of the year, and we are now in the middle of the seasonal growth. In winter, inventories in diesel maybe less, they are growing. They're at the level a little bit higher, but average in recent times. But the structure, the market, which we complain about in UNIMOT, which is backwardation that has been persistent since the beginning of the war in Ukraine, which doesn't encourage the commercial participant to store fuel if it doesn't result from trading or operational positions. Therefore, these inventories are now at a very high level. That's why we have this growth, very big growth on products, because people see that the amounts of inventories are not so high to cover the long-term demands. Problems with transit through straits. Natural gas market. Qatar has announced a major force, which translated into the growth of gas prices. We remember that gas was this product, and in 2021 caused a lot of gray hair appeared on a lot of heads. $300 for a megawatt hour, 300 euros, sorry. Even if you look at the charts today, it's difficult to look at the charts. We don't have this jump to 300. We are below 50 euro, but still gas reacted very dynamically. And what is often shown, recipients of gas from Qatar, Europe is not the main recipient, but the ones who have been mentioned here in the chart, they have to turn to supplies in the situation when Qatar slashes the deliveries. So we will compete for the same volumes, and this will have not indirect but direct impact on Europe. We have to remember that historical analyses that are often shown, the dependencies or lack of dependencies are changing because market is unfolding afresh. Sorry to interrupt you. This was this negative factor when it comes to our business in UNIMOT Energy and Gas, the carbon business. We like seasonality and those short-term geopolitical issues that distort this market from this classical cycle, winter, summer, where we can earn money. Here you can see the breakdown. Europe, half of the gas imports through pipelines. Of course, Norway. This is also Algeria, not mentioned so often, but Sonatrach is a very serious supplier to Europe for many years. And also LNG gas, the United States. And in the recent period, LNG gas from Russia, not covered by sanctions. President Putin threatened this week that he will stop this export to Europe, treating this as an element of economic pressure. So on the one hand, you can read this chart positively because we are not buying so much from Qatar, but it's also clear information for our allies. From the United States, they will have new customers who will try to do this. Something that is not discussed a lot, but we wanted to share it with you. Since 2022, we've been talking a lot about our presence on the LPG market, sanctions on the Russian LPG. These sanctions were sealed in January, and this product is very important to us. We also have a growth of the price of LPG. The quotations went up by 30%. At the petrol stations, you can see that the gas is not as sensitive as to the situation in Near East, because the products from Near East, especially Aramco, which is the price maker, there is a special quotation. They don't have such a big impact on Europe today. And the United States come back here. We did not talk about oil as much. We are following it fundamentally. We've just said about LNG gas, but we can't forget, in case of the United States, about propane, which is an important issue because we use it for cars in Poland, for heating our houses. This is an important product because a lot of people use bottled gas, which is a social product. So the price is very sensitive, but the stations, we can observe that it doesn't react this way. Last week, I was in the United States for a week, and it was related to the LNG gas. There were information about it in the press. A lot was said about LNG. Why? I'm just sharing this chart with you. You can see how much of the capacity of the United States is planned in the United States. The United States want to dominate not only the oil market, not only the LNG market, but also the LPG market, which is a good information to make the distinction between good and bad information. And it's not only verbal form on the side of the United States, but also new capacities, transshipment capacities that were started in 2025 and 2026. You can see in this chart how big these capacities are. We're talking about big ships, 20,000, 40,000. These are favorite ships. And here the signal. Europe has to learn its lesson and do the homework, because the Americans are building the export infrastructure, but Europe lacks the import infrastructure. LNG terminals have been developing much, not only in our Świnoujście or Klaipėda, but floating terminals in Germany or other places in Europe. But with LPG, we are not keeping the pace, but LPG is very important, but it's also used in petrochemical industry, and we can observe it in recent times. Come back to 2022, we have a part of industrial customers who are dual fuel, so they can transit from the natural gas to propane, seeing the proportion of the price. The propane, after this spike, after 50 euro, and the price of LNG at the time, propane became competitive again, and since 2022, we have started delivering this gas to our customers. In Willeshamn, we have our terminal. The ships come to this terminal, and it's working in full swing. From the time of sealing the sanctions, 2 terminals in Zawadzkie and Piotrków Trybunalski, we are strong in the propane gas, and this favors what is going to happen in the middle term when it comes to UNIMOT. Possible solutions at the European Union level. I want to stress that these are not the solutions that we came up with, but the solutions that are discussed in the industry, and politicians ask industry experts what can be done if the situation escalates. So it's not something that we have come up with, but we are just making public certain things that have been discussed openly in the sector. We know that, and the government spoke about it. We have big compulsory reserves for 90 days. So to stabilize, we know how the system operates, because in our depots, we store a lot of inventories for our importers. So the system is efficient, well governed, and we believe they will work very well. Yesterday, while preparing the presentation, we didn't know that OFAC was going to act so quickly. It alleviated the sanctions for 30 days and allowed for the influx of Russian oil to India. I remind you that several last months was a political war between India and the United States, with the United States putting a lot of pressure on India to stop buying the Russian oil, and the European Union decided to introduce sanctions since January on countries that refine Russian oil. The Indian company Reliance, since January, couldn't export diesel to Europe because it was refining it from Russian oil. But yesterday, OFAC, which shows that they treat this issue very seriously, they show that there is distortion of deliveries, and OFAC allowed India to buy this product. This is the level number 2. The system will be stabilized. We don't know whether India is going to import, because in many countries it's said that the import restrictions are necessary. It's been discussed for some time. I know it sounds like science fiction in the present political situation, and this is something that is the last element. The Western countries, the United States and the European Union do is just resigning from the sanctions on the Russian product, but imposing duties on them. There was a group in Europe of influential people who just suggested the solution that the Russians sell their products with a discount on the world markets. It's better for Europe to buy these products with this discount on the European markets, given that the Russians still sell these products, and introducing additional duties on those products and destining those incomes from the duties to help the war in Ukraine. It wasn't openly spoken in the political debate, but if you hear about it today, this is something that has been heard from some time. The third point, the question of India exporting diesel and jet fuel to Europe, but they declare because they want to ensure supplies for their home market. Similar situation in Turkey, which ceased to deliver to Europe because they refine Russian oil. But if the sanction package was withdrawn, Turkey could say thank you for making this export to Europe available, but we are not interested as we cover our own demand. So the situation is dynamic, and the government and those who have influence on the stance, they will decide whether these solutions will be necessary. What hurts us most, which is liquidation, fuel inventories. We always say that we have 100% secured inventories, but the market is in the situation of the extreme backwardation. How does it influence the prices? We want to explain it, how it influences the prices in Poland. I'm coming back to our fixed price. UNIMOT offered this fixed price a couple of months ago. These are two phases of backwardation, you could say. One is the negative one, which we dislike as an importer, to offer to you and to us and to Avia fuel. We need to have operational inventories. You can't be present in the market and sell 2 million of cubic meters. You need to have the reserves and the compulsory reserves. So the ones who know us, they know that this is a serious burden and it complicates financial reporting. And this backwardation, as a rule, it grows significantly when there is a high spike of price related to current events. So the market anticipates that in the future it will just stabilize, but in the short term we have a problem, imbalanced market and risk. And the first chart shows how this backwardation, the situation in which future prices are lower than spot prices, these prices were how much these prices were lower before Friday. Until Friday, this backwardation 2-month-long backwardation was at the level of $20, which hurts us. But it was bearable. But at a certain moment, when the spot market started jumping since January, with every spike, prices, future prices did not grow, not at the same level as the spot prices. So we are at $20 per ton now. We'll talk about it, and the land premiums are growing because this is the burden for us and the refineries and for all those entities dealing with fuels. But this backwardation also causes that we can also offer our customers fixed prices in future periods. Been doing it for some time. First transactions were conducted maybe 2 years ago. As we look at it nowadays, diesel, ask my colleagues from Avia and what the competition does. 7 zlotys starts to appear, and when the stations reach the levels, when I look at the market, it's still growing, so 7.30. That should be spot prices. So please know that fuel with delivery in July you can buy at a lower price. This is because we can buy this fuel today, and we can just supply this fuel to you in August at a cheaper price. This product is accompanied by risks, and with the fact that this fuel can be lower at the time, but this time is possible to fix and secure, and we got a lot of customers who are recipients of fuel because they participate in tenders that they have with fixed prices, so they need to know this price today, not to buy the cheapest level. So we have unfavorable and favorable things together, a bit of marketing, a bit of advertising, but this is the product that we've been mentioning for a long time. This is the product which on the Polish market, you don't have a lot of transactions where the price is secured. The mature markets are different, like Germany, the Netherlands, Benelux countries. There are a lot of prices that are hedged, which means that the winner of a tender constructs a road. This entity wants to budget the price. Non-hedging is speculating. What we offer is securing price, and being on the open market, everyday market, you have the consequences. Somebody who budgeted the price of maybe 6 zlotys, but today we are above 7 zlotys. So this is speculating. This topic is gaining a lot of interest, so maybe this offer will be even more interesting for the customers. I will only add here Orlen and part of refineries in Europe, Central Europe, have seasonal refurbishments or overhauls. This is an unlucky coincidence. Maybe you would not even hear about it because refineries built inventories earlier. This is a normal situation, but in the current situation, this causes trouble because they have to use import more, and this is favorable for us. You can see the land premium. We just show at quarterly results. Analysts always ask us about the land premium. We complained about the low level of the land premium below 650 zlotys, which was the premium that reflects the cost of import at the level of 700. But in this situation where you have to import more and all the market players import more, you have to just lead this situation with the land premium, where it reflects $50 of premium that you have to pay per each barrel of the important product, which is very favorable for us, which is the comeback to market situation, not an extraordinary situation, and we are not generate extraordinary results or speculating. What we can see here is a signal that market players, all market players, are playing according to market trends and to what is happening on the market. I just want to say one thing. It looks really pretty. The growth of land premium by 200 of Polish zlotys, which is a huge change. Please know that we sell the volume that's sensitive to this land premium. But this is one side of the coin. The other side is cost, capital intensity, which jumps like jumps over almost 100%, or diesel by 40-60%. Our capital intensity is growing, financial costs will be growing, and the engagement. On the other side, on the other hand, purchase premiums, of course, uncontracted ones for the entire year. But backwardation hurts us, as you know, so this backwardation will negatively impact our results. But we observe what is happening on the market, and we are optimistic about it, which is a good signal. But this is also a factor that encourages us for import. It stabilizes the market. What has been happening since Monday? On Monday, we woke up and we knew that there was war in the Middle East, which you can see on these two charts in cubic meters. How much fuel we release on our terminals. So 2 Mondays, you can see a significant growth to average. The average, it was 10,000 meters, so it's the growth by 40%. But you can clearly see increased traffic on terminals and the stations, building inventories to cover the growing demand from customers, and also what was happening on area stations. We are trying to follow the market, but we are not using margins that are not market ones, which would be unfair. But we can see this significant growth when it comes to sales. It's 64%, a lot. Of course, we have to say that this is postponed sale, which means that if somebody earlier filled up earlier than the original schedule, so this person will not start driving more because this person has more fuel in the tank. So you can expect that if the situation stabilizes, there will be a drop in sales, which is the effect of being far from panic. But customers observe and draw their own conclusions. They decided to go to stations and buy more fuel. The last slide, the perspective, from the perspective of the UNIMOT Group, you know that our DNA is the changing prices of raw materials. We are in our element here. So although it's difficult time, it's the time when our experiences we can show best, which is difficult to do on this stable market. We've been working 24 hours a day since Sunday. First of all, to secure the product, to have something to sell. Prices are secondary. We have good diversification of deliveries, well diversified purchase deals. We have to buy parts in spot market, but our office in Geneva is doing really well. It was a good decision to start this office. We are very positive about the LPG market. The sanctions introduced on the Russian product had a positive influence on us in February and the beginning of March. And now the escalation of this situation, if somebody owns assets, we have those assets, we have wagons that work under Olavian. So in such difficult circumstances, customers always turn to those businesses that guarantee long-term purchases. In good times, you can buy this fuel in different places, but then the moment of truth arrives, and now we can show that we are a very serious company, one of the key players on the market of the Central Europe. Of course, we can see the threats. We've already discussed part of them. Philip, can you summarize all of them? So the threats, economic condition. So here we would prefer the economic growth. The COVID year was the exception here because the results were good, but the situation was complicated. But here, the development of the economic growth consumption, this is a good thing. Disruption in marine transport, we risk here. Our risk is that the disruptions are so strong that we can't find the product. We are far from this. Of course, the product is available, it's expensive. Suppliers demand ever higher premiums, but it's available. The Germans give the product to us, we then give it to the Ukraine. The backwardation causes the growth of costs, significant growth of costs, which are offset by the land premium. Legislation risks. We are afraid of the intervention of the state into the prices. If it's a brutal one that limits the margin or obliges companies to operate on a negative margin, then this is a risk for all of us. So we assume that there won't be such situations. High prices, interest rates are going down, but the growth of dollar and the drop of Polish zloty and the growing price of fuels, so the costs of our business are growing, which has a negative impact. I will here relate to this legislation risk. I'm the first proponent of free market, and I'm also the first person to say that in these difficult situations, certain frames have to be put on the market. A report of Mario Braghio, who drew conclusions from the gas crisis in 2022, showed that the market was dysregulated because of speculations. Here, the legislation, we want it to be the same for everyone. So if state steps in, there is legislation, correction of VAT or mandatory reserves, shortened time of compulsory reserves. But the worst thing is verbal interventions, where one or two players act on completely different terms than the rest of the market, which is a bad thing. We witnessed it in the past, but this dialogue is going on, and the Ministry of the Energy has meetings with the industry. There were relations. I saw them on the X platform, and very responsible discussions take place there. What can be done within the market, within the margin operations of companies, logistics or optimizations, and so on. So we assume that the industry will cope with the crisis without any need for legal intervention. If they will pertain to the entire market. This is what we wanted to share with you. And now we are open to your questions. There can be quite a few of them, and we'll be pleased to answer them. Thank you very much for this presentation and introduction. Now we are going to the session of questions and answers. I'd like to use this opportunity and ask several questions myself. And so I will start with this question of risks. Poland has got diversified sources of deliveries, and as you have shown today, we are in a better situation than a couple of years ago, and also the UNIMOT Group, also through fixed price contracts providing fuels. But for the time being, this conflict can be felt only through this sharp increase of prices, wholesale and retail prices. But how long would it have to go, and what would have to happen to appear vital threats, risks to Polish economy, and which of them can be the nearest one? I'm most afraid of the escalation of the conflict when it comes to the scope of the conflict. We are talking about the Persian Gulf and the refineries that are located around the Persian Gulf. Theoretically, doesn't have a translation to the current market, but we have to speak clearly here that a lot of refinery capacities have been moved out from Europe. They've been moved out to Near East, and huge, large refinery complexes were created there, and that's how we feel those results of the situation. If they were located in Europe, maybe some of them would be operating, some of them would be switched off, but we have switched off part of the refinery part in the Persian Gulf, but we have complexes that are active on the shore of the Red Sea, and our market player who claims that the deliveries of oil from that direction are safe. But when we can see the range of Iran missiles, and we remember when the installations in Saudi Arabia were attacked, they disrupted for several days or even more the entire export of Saudi Arabia. So if the conflict develops, I understand that we shouldn't panic now, but we can't remain silent about certain things because we should start preparing for them. So escalation of conflict is the major risk in this region, this very region, not transferring it to Europe, for example, because of those big refinery complexes that supply to Europe and to Asia. And this part of Red Sea is European refineries that was closed here in Europe and moved there. If it's safe, I'm happy, and I assume that everyone fights for these refineries to be safe. But this is not the same situation as refineries in Germany or the Netherlands. In this situation, do you have an estimate of the spot price growth if the conflict lasts for longer and spread it geographically wider? Even the level of $120 per barrel. Maybe I say something unpopular at times. What is $120 per barrel? When we had to survive 147, we had 150 a lot of years back. Then this dollar is not the same as the dollar 10 years ago. So today's prices crossing this psychological barrier of $100. This is not the same $100 15 years ago. So when you look at the prices of fuels, I'm not saying they are cheap. That would be criticized, but we are far from panic. So even if it's $150 per barrel, this is not exorbitant price. Of course, we've got refinery margins. So this is what I'm more afraid of, the price of the ready product, which is bad, but this is the free market. So if the prices of fuels go up, then the consumption drops, and this is how market regulates itself. If I bought several donuts instead of 4 donuts, I'm going to buy 3. So if I bought fuels for 200 or 300 zlotys for filling up with petrol, then I will still fill up for the same money, and the market will regulate itself, although there will be temporary spikes, but I'm far from this. Market is huge, optimized, a lot of suppliers, capacities are scattered, and the market has to unfold afresh. The premiums from the time of the war in Ukraine, after 4 or 5 months, we came back to the premiums from the times when fuels were imported to Poland from Russia. So it can be the same here, but I'm far from panic. And this is why we have backwardation, because markets project this. Markets know that the prices are going to drop because the supply can grow and the demand will drop. One more question. What is the situation of the wholesale market of jet fuel? Can it affect airlines that operate here in Poland? Poland is very well balanced with jets. We have a small import loophole. That's why we started this activity as UNIMOT Aviation. Contracts in jet fuel are based on a monthly average with fixed premiums from the jet price. So the direct translation is not present, although in the scope of petroleum, this share of Near East was small when it comes to Europe, maybe about 20% of import in case of Europe. In case of jet, it's 50%. 50% of jet produced in Near East, it was directed by one of the newest refineries, 300,000 ton ships. They were directed towards Europe. We can see that the Near East has come to a halt. Those ports in Abu Dhabi, Doha, as transit ports, about 70% of traffic were transit flights. It would be worth to see how the remaining refineries are working, but premiums went up there. We were showing it in this chart of jet, $300 before the war, $80, $90, $100 was the premium on jet. So on diesel, we grew from $5, $10 of premium to 50, and here from 100 we grew to 300, which is very indicative. American OFAC eliminated the sanctions for the Russian oil, Can you see such a possibility the European Union is going to do the same thing? Can the situation in Near East can impact the correction of the course of the European Union, because this is the limitation of the transformation. This transformation that has been going on in Europe for a couple of years. Paradoxically, this climate policy can be strengthened by this situation. Very political questions that are asked by you, and you know that my answers are not very political. I protest, and if we have in Near East a problem, we'll develop renewable energy sources. In Europe, this is the first mistake. The first point should be that we will increase capacities of generating energy in Europe. We need to generate more of energy ourselves. We have to be more energy independent. And how we are going to generate this energy? Maybe this is a big share of green energy. This is a secondary issue, because our problem is generating very little energy. Great Britain, for example, it's no longer in love with gas, and they bid very well to those investors who looked for gas. Shell was taken to court selling assets. We should be mining more carbohydrates in Europe, nuclear energy, but these should be experts who should decide what the European mix should look like in these new circumstances that we have nowadays. Reducing the emission of carbon dioxide cannot be a priority. Security of Europe is the priority. We have to generate more energy in different shapes. Gas, oil, not coal. I'm not the proponent of coal. You don't want to go 1 kilometer under the ground and look for coal, but automatic development of renewable energy sources in Germany, for example, is not a solution which we can learn from the German example. Independence, energy independence is the solution, not just green energy. Let's move to questions from the participants of our meeting. Mr. Andrzej writes, taking into consideration low level of gas inventories in Germany, does it open the way to UNIMOT to have a bigger participation on this market, given the distortion of supplies from Qatar? This is not something that we are interested in. LNG, of course, the difficulty is the access to infrastructure, but our company, UNIMOT Energia and Gas, has a big position. We own 150 kilometers of a gas network. We have contact with final customers. So gas that was called a transitional fuel, which I protest to, because we'll have to say sorry to this fuel. And it's not a transitional fuel, it's a real fuel that can ensure energy. And UNIMOT, of course, will seize this opportunity. This is not just opportunistic issue, given the low level of inventories. We have always been interested in gas. I'd like to ask maybe another question. In this situation, do you consider resignation from acquiring customers in the gas segment, vice versa? This is the time we can show that we are here, we are with you, we have product. These are moments like this where you build relations. Thank you. And now another question. How does hedging prices look like in the company? What are the three most important directions of supplies of fuels? Western Europe, Norway, where we have large contracts. We buy LPG in Norway, not natural gas, not LNG, LPG. Norway is a large producer. We have a chartered ship that serves those deliveries. Area, Amsterdam, Antwerp. We are diversified. We have price formulas. Majority of these contracts are annual contracts in LPG. We feel comfortably, and our peers are smaller. Then when it comes to diesel, if I'm asked whether I'm more worried about diesel or LPG, the answer would be diesel rather than LPG. Another question: are you going to increase the capacity of logistics, or do you have to purchase land? The capacity of logistics in the situation that we have nowadays, this is public information. Poland is in the process of transformation of compulsory reserves. We should increase the amount of our compulsory reserves stored in fuels, more in fuels, less in oil. This is what is happening. There were different voices heard, and a positive thing. There were voices that maybe it wasn't necessary because it was okay, but sudden loss of refinery capacities causes that even if I have oil, I can't have diesel because the customers cannot fill up with oil. They have to fill up with diesel. So it's beneficial for us. We have investment plans. We have applied for consents. So mid and long-term situation is favorable because this confirms what we have said as a market participant. Draw conclusions from what happened in Ukraine. We have to be prepared for different scenarios. We didn't talk about Iran, but it only shows that one should think about it. So discussions are ongoing, and the law was passed despite the voices to postpone this law, but in these circumstances, these voices will go silent. And we have room in our terminals. To our terminals were previously refineries. We bought them. We invest in one of the terminals. We bought, this was our investment, additional square meters where we want to put additional tanks. So we have our investment program related to it. Another question: the present growth of gas prices is negative for the current business of UNIMOT. Is a bigger loss possible here? It is negative because we won't be making profit. If there is no contango, we can't. We have rented storage capacity. We would like to fill in the cavern to sell it the next winter, but winter today is lower than the present price, so it's lost margin. It's not a loss. Question about LPG. Recent sanctions that were introduced on the Russian product effectively hampered its import. Yes, homework was done. There were a lot of emotions related to it, but we can see that there is very little of this product. There were voices that from Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, something was going to Poland. Independent countries, but never were suppliers to Poland. Some volumes appeared, but industry reacted quickly, reported quickly, and the customs services are looking at it. But the scale is very, very small, just several percent points. But you have to be alert because there will be people who want to bypass sanctions, or maybe there is the situation when it's profitable to carry the product through Russia or Belarus, but these are exotic. But these are quite exotic directions of supplies. The question about the bitumen market, how this current crisis influences this segment and margins. Prices up, margins, we try to keep them at a fixed level, but if something grows, then the percent of the margin per ton is also growing. And in the long perspective, the tenders that we have won, the constructions that we have contracted, they have to take place, regardless of what is going on. We don't know whether in the future there will be less construction works, and in the midterm, this can have a negative effect. Today, the growth of prices is a positive element in bitumens. I know that this segment is very efficient. We've repeated it a lot of times. After acquisition of Lotus Asphalt, we increased the volumes there about 50%. In depots in Czechowicz and Jasło, we created transit hubs, not only the volume that was directed only from refinery, because these facilities only took product from the Gdańsk refinery. We created their logistic and import hubs from different directions. So this business makes us really happy. I would come back to the market structure and fixed prices, because this is the big part of bitumen sales, which is a problem for me and for us, because we have valuations in our results, but a lot of our customers do not feel the change of prices because they have prices fixed beforehand, and the backwardation makes those customers more willing to conclude contracts at fixed prices. I want to emphasize it, and I want to appeal here to the owners, transportation companies. I was surprised how big part of transactions on the bitumen market are financial transactions. So people who work on the asphalt market, they know that they need to secure the price, or they are vulnerable. In Poland, I mean here, diesel market, there are few of these transactions, which means the customers are speculating. So customers say, what hedging, what security? I'm not speculating when I say that, yeah, you are speculating here. So I hope that this situation with backwardation just asks, when the price is 730, to take the annual average. We can reach 660 today, which is the price before the war. So maybe worth catching this price and have a peaceful sleep. Thank you very much. Another question. Can you tell us more about how the UNIMOT Group is preparing for the potential further distortions of energy resources resulting from the situation in the Near East? Of course, I don't want to go into details. We work 24 hours a day. We observe what is happening. Very operational things. We are critical infrastructure as UNIMOT Terminale, so we have our duties. In this respect, today we concentrate on supplies. This is critical. Price is secondary at this difficult moment. We know that it's the most important thing is to acquire product. You can see me on LinkedIn, X. I give information. I was at a conference. People ask me why you go there. I do it to have contacts, because at such a moment I can send a message on WhatsApp It's really important to me, and it works on a lot of markets. For example, the American market. I can say that we are your allies. So instead of selling to China that didn't buy from you, sell this product to us. We will pay the market price. Nobody's going to be a Santa Claus, but this is the struggle for each ton to have product. And this is what we do, and this is what I do, what Philip does, what Robert Brzozowski does, Philip Diaz in Geneva as well. For the time being, if there are no catastrophic disruptions, we'll work efficiently. Thank you very much. Another question from our listener. At this level, at Primitive Baltic, UNIMOT conducts import of diesel, or is it stopped? What are the other market participants doing? What is the level of commercial fuels? It's known that the Gdańsk refinery has stoppage now. In this negative scenario, lack of imports and high premium, when you assess there will be the need to release inventories. I'm not confirming it. It's too far going that we will have to free the inventories. Import is still at a normal level. The growth of premium, I could just give it because the transactions are taking place at this level. The worst situation is that the stock market doesn't continue transactions, but the product flows, product is available, you can buy it, it's just more expensive. So every import company does not stop the import only because the price is higher. Our compulsory reserves are the same level as they were before war. It was the same with other operators, but I would just go back to 24th of February 2022, the first day of war in Ukraine. Compared to that time, this growth is not significant. We couldn't see use at petrol stations. Consumers reacted, but we are far from panic. So releasing the inventories, it's one of the possible scenarios, but this one of the cards of our 3 or 4 activities that we can introduce, but not today. One more question. In the same context, can you see a risk that Poland would have to stop export of fuels to Ukraine for some time? No, we didn't have to in 2022. The situation wasn't easier. It was as difficult as it is today, so we don't have to do it. We as a company, we have contracts concluded with cooperators from Ukraine. We shouldn't be doing it. This is a political issue. We have been supporting Ukraine for so many years, and the activities that are favorable for us, for our country, to deprive them of fuels nowadays. In 2022, the inventories were revealed, but few people knew about it. But from the perspective of time, the government meeting market players at the time, they did the same thing. We looked at balances, the contracts, preserving the competition rules. We did it, and it was effective. Today, the activities are similar, but I'm very peaceful here about it. I'm not panicking. There is a growth of prices, but there are no incentives for releasing inventories. If it turns out that despite of the growth of prices, there is no product, then there will be another move. But as you've said, from the perspective of availability of product and sources of acquisition. We are in a much better situation than in 2022. And a very important macro thing, the Ukrainian market is a third of the Polish market. Ukraine, despite that it was a similar size country to Poland, we don't know how many people are still in Ukraine. Below 30 million consumption of fuels in Ukraine is about a third of consumption of fuels in Poland. In diesel is about 1/3. So given the size of the consumption, Ukraine is not critical for us, because if it needed from us the same amount as we, then it would be critical. So the size of inventories, when we translate them into the size of Ukraine, we are for half a year for Ukraine, for ourselves for 90 days. So we can be, we don't have to worry about it. And one more question from the political, close to politics area. What does it mean that the ministry is consulting the industry? Are these consultations about compulsory reserves? Can you say who is invited for these discussions? The host of the compulsory reserves is RARS, the institution this is in charge of it. Market participants, I don't want to speak on behalf of the ministry. We as UNIMOT participate and we are not alone there. There are other meetings. They are about more operational things, what companies planning ahead, because RARS and ministry knows better what the level of inventories is, because we know the level of our own inventories, not other players. So they want to know what the international market looks like, supplies, spot supplies versus long-term contracts, very operational things that influence the possibility of supplies of fuels. In the perspective of 1-2 months, I understand there was an announcement, sorry, I'm on a leave now. I wasn't at the meeting, but there were representatives of our company. This announcement, I'm not here a spokesman for the government, but this has an influence on UNIMOT as well. I can't tell you that this is a catastrophe, because then you could say that we were wrong in our assessments. If there is a shift, then we will hold another conference, press conference, and we'll explain that we can see new risks. Just like in COVID and war in Ukraine, this is not our last meeting with you. Today, we are just saying to keep nerves on hold. And now the issue that had to appear in today's meeting, how the situation in Near East impacts the plans of UNIMOT, in UNIMOT's involvement into productions of drones. You can see in this conflict that drones and anti-drones installations are the basis. What is the involvement of UNIMOT into PZL defense? We are very active in this area. We have a large team, now over 20 employees and engineers who work. We focus on developing not entirely our own products, but I spoke about it, that we wanted to work closely with Ukraine and ensure backup for Ukraine when it comes to the needs. We have to say it clearly. If you follow the market information, it's difficult. There is no serious plant in Poland cooperating with Ukraine. One of the reasons is the export licenses to bring technologies here to Poland, but it doesn't take week. It's military technology. If somebody takes this technology from there here on pen drive. This is illegal. We always stick to the letter of law, but I confirm what is happening in the Near East. It shows that the war in Ukraine was a game changer and not the tanks and heavy equipment decides how you can reach the enemy. But for short distances, not ballistic missiles, the drones are very effective because one drone can shut down one refinery and disrupt the bloodline of the country. So we are active in this area. I hope that you can see some groups of products that we can offer. We are in a dialogue with the Polish military forces, and here it's different than with fuels. In fuels, we have several thousand of customers. Here, the customer is going to be the military, so the dialogue takes more than you could expect because the challenges are different. In Ukraine, a plant can produce a drone today and tomorrow it's used on the front line. There is no war in Poland, so we should more focus on the anti-drone defense. But if we want to commission this anti-drone defense, it would be also to have drones to use as a counter-strike. There are discussions what Poland should do. Certain things have been done, certain decisions are waiting. We are in the dialogue. This is the most important thing. And the local content and the turmoil with the SAFE program, which shows the stress on the Polish industry and the participation of the local industry, that we will be the beneficiary of these actions. Financial questions, this issue has been already tackled. The conflict in Far East causes that stakes at your terminals are growing. No, that would be irresponsible of us. We are not going to do this. We've taken over customers. We've built a portfolio of new customers as a company. We have to behave responsibly because on the one hand, we are an operator on the market. We sell wholesale fuels, and part of our competition store their fuels with us. So we haven't done anything like this. If we had record profits and dividends, it was because we use market opportunities, not speculations. So it didn't even come to our minds. I understand that sometimes you might think about such things, but we have market stakes, market rates. If we had those rates below market ones, but we have those rates with our customers, and we have long-term contracts with our customers. Rates increased, they are growing because the costs are growing. This is not the process that began now. For years, there haven't been an investments, and the law about the change of inventories, more fuels, less oil, it causes that investments appeared, and the rate in a new tank is different than in a one that is 20 or 30 years old. But these rates on market ones, we negotiate with customers. We are not using only our depots, we also use external depots. So there are strong negotiations. They want to raise rates, they have alternatives, we have alternatives, so this is a competitive market. And the question about results, which in fact will be stronger for the results of UNIMOT on the diesel market, the growth of land premium or negative effect of backwardation. We assume that we'll have, as we look at today's land premiums, so it's premiums. What can be the beta, monthly beta in the segment of liquid fuels at the level of land premium. Sorry, we can't reveal it. And after 4 days of dysregulated markets, we can't evaluate the entire year. A similar question in this area, I'd like to ask in which segment this year you can see the biggest chance for growth of results given the market volatility. To understand it well, volatility may suggest we are so good that we buy when it's cheap and sell when it's expensive. No, we don't do such things. For us, volatility is uncertainty. It's a better word. We are in the period of uncertainty, and we maybe understand because of 30 years of our experience, we better understand certain mechanisms, and we are better at projecting. Do we risk the price? No, because we use price hedging. So on Friday, I came back from the United States, and I told my colleagues I could smell something there, but we did not open, and the company did not open any positions. We started searching for product because we wanted to have a bigger turmoil on product. We are not speculating. I know situations of fantastic traders, and for 9 years they were so lucky in the industry, and then a Monday or Friday came and they didn't have money for deposits, or even not for deposits. They weren't even positions. So we are not going to do so, because this is not only play for big boys, it's playing with the matches. With such changes in 5 minutes, we end the conference, and you can see that there is armistice, and the markets are going down $20 or $30. And the last question from me, because another weekend ahead of us. Last week, you had some feelings after the visit to the United States. What is the market expecting in those days to come? The market evaluates it can take a while, and if the market evaluates, the market, we usually say, is quite smart. So those people on the market assume that it's going to take a while. So it's logistics. We have to unfold logistics again. Singapore was this place in the world that if somebody couldn't sell in another part of the world, but Singapore this week is more expensive than Europe because of the different time zone. So we are waiting for the market to balance itself, but the market evaluates that it's going to take some time. Thank you very much for your presentation and very interesting session of questions and answers, and your attitude to inform and educate the market as you've been doing for years. Mine and yours guests were Mr. Adam Sikorski, President of the Management Board of the UNIMOT Group. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And this element of education that you have mentioned, I'd like you, especially our shareholders, be aware that positions in UNIMOT are occupied by the right people. We have no influence on certain things, but you should know that we are monitoring the market because this is your money and we have to take care of it. And the more you understand the company, the better for us it is to make decisions. And this composition has not changed for years, and Mr. Filip Kuropatwa is also member of this composition. Thank you very much, Mr. Kuropatwa, for joining us today and answering the questions. Thank you for your attention. I wish you a very peaceful afternoon, very peaceful weekend. See you next time. Thank you.
Okej, jesteśmy już offline, tak?